Chapter 16. The university school was built around a central courtyard. Gracie Hall, now the lower school, had been built in 1903 as a home for John Dewey's radical new school. Forming the west side of the quadrangle, King Hall had been built almost 30 years later for the University of Chicago's education department. The idea was to be able to observe what was going on in Dewey's now famous laboratory. A new middle school building, built in 1990, was on the east side, and the high school, built in 1960, on the north. Poppy Field Hall, tucked behind the high school, dated back to 1904 and had music and art rooms. The following morning, Calder and Petra sat down on a bench in the Gracie Hall lobby. They were facing a stone fireplace that had a bust of Francis Parker on the mantel. Parker, a colleague of John Dewey's, had a university high baseball cap on and a red scarf around his neck. The painting is small, remember? The canvas is only about 1 foot by 1.5 feet. Calder was fiddling with his patomanos. Think, hundreds of kids and grown-ups go in and out of this building all day. There are cleaning people in here at night. What's a place that no one would disturb? Calder pulled a patomano out of his pocket and looked at it. They both stared at the T in Calder's palm. T for 12. There aren't 12 floors. I don't get it, Calder shrugged. Petra sat up straight, her knees cupped in her hands. Let's try to think like Miss Hussey. She'd find a place with no leaks or mice or anything. Calder was scraping the tea back and forth on the wooden bench. 12. Does Miss Hussey have 12 of anything? She wears all those earrings. There's a key, a pearl, a high heel shoe. Calder was muttering now. Key, pearl, shoe. Shoe, pearl, key. Pearl, shoe, key. Heel, key, pearl. Key, per, heel. Hey, that sounds like keep her here, doesn't it? Petra laughed. Now you got me thinking like a patomano. Maybe this means she's in Gracie Hall. Calder, in his excitement, gave Petra a quick bear hug. Good thinking, he said. Straightening her glasses, she tried not to look too pleased. He and Petra agreed that they should pretend to make a master map of the school. This would give them an excuse to poke around during lunch. None of the classes aside from their own would know that it wasn't an assignment. At lunchtime, armed with measuring tapes, clipboards, and pencils, they covered the first floor, checking even unlikely places. They looked in storage closets, behind file cabinets, under the beds in the nurse's office, inside old paper towel dispensers in the bathroom, around the coat rack in the director's boardroom, and beneath hats and mittens in the lost and found. On day 2, they covered the second floor. Although it was hard to be thorough, most of the classrooms had 100-year-old built-in cupboards and drawers and bookshelves, and it was awkward explaining why they had to look into those to measure the room. Petra got bitten by a hamster, and in the science room, Calder accidentally allowed a box of hissing cockroaches to escape down a heating grate. Petra dropped a hunk of limestone being examined by 4th grade geologists on her toe, and Calder got a 3rd grade teacher angry by trying to look behind her bulletin board and knocking off some drawings of the Great Chicago Fire. They had worked their way through Gracie Hall except for the basement, which was locked. They decided to talk with Mrs. Truck, the lower school principal, about letting them in. Always enthusiastic about kids' projects, she could be counted on to help. They explained about the map, and she agreed to take them down there the next day. That defeats the whole purpose. Calder was digging in his locker for his math book. He didn't realize that Petra had walked ahead. A voice behind him said, "Talking to yourself?" Where's your girlfriend? It was Denise. Calder felt his face get hot and slammed his locker door. Someone ought to hide her somewhere permanently. On Monday morning, they met up with Mrs. Truck as planned, reminiscing about the kindergarten field trip to the basement, a tradition in the lower school. Calder and Petra watched as the principal struggled with the bolt. They had forgotten how weird the place was. The walls were fieldstone and the floor went uphill and down. Right angles had clearly been abandoned below ground level. They saw piles of rolled rugs, broken benches, a tangle of plumbing pipes, even a clawfoot tub. There were spidery shapes made out of old dust stacked top to top. Mrs. Truck had just unlocked the supply room when her cell phone began to ring. A parent needed to speak with her in the office. "Oh, dear, will you be okay down here for just a minute? I'll be right back." As soon as she left, Calder and Petra opened the supply room door. Reaching bravely into blackness, Calder groped around for the light. It wasn't on the wall by the door. He took a couple of steps into the room, ran into a string hanging from the ceiling, and pulled it. Shelves of construction paper and boxes of pencils and rulers jumped into focus. Teachers were allowed down here for supplies. Both kids could imagine Miss Hussey using it as a hiding place. There was no time for talking. Quickly, they ran their hands along the shelves, behind cartons, tried to lift crates. On one side of the room were several old picture frames. Behind them, leaning against the wall, was a small package wrapped neatly in brown paper. It wasn't as dusty as the others and was the right size, no doubt about it. They heard steps coming down the stairs and Mrs. Truck calling their names. By the time the principal reached the supply room, Petra was alone.